Stay up late tonight for Room 101, The Fast Show, and stay up very late for Texas on Later with Jules. First on BBC Two, time to dust off the TV listings.
Tonight we're watching what we watched from the 11th to the 17th of April 1970. On the front of the TV Times that week was a sideburns crooner and a film star. On the Radio Times, a football team. That was the week that colour television was in the flush of its youth, even if the jokes were ancient. It was the week we all went cosmic with star child Julie Felix, where we had Liftoff with Mary, Mungo and Midge, where Les Dawson was launching his career. Tommy Cooper was alive and well, and his Saturday night variety show was out of this world.
I went to this boarding house and I knocked at the door. The landlady put her head out the window. She said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to stay here." She wants to stay there and shut the window.
But the TV event that didn't make it to the cover of either magazine, but was eventually to dominate the schedules for the rest of the week, was the lunar voyage of Apollo 13, set to blast off just after the Tommy Cooper show on Saturday, April the 11th.
10, 9, 8, ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13.
We had Apollo 11, Apollo 12, they've gone without a hitch. Apollo 13, well, just another moon flight, and of course it didn't work out like that. Apollo 13 was a mission that no one will ever forget. Certainly I won't.
Flight Dynamics Officer says the trajectory looks good. We show a 1/2 mile in altitude at this time.
To begin with, everything was ship-shape, or rather spaceship shape. The crew of Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes and Jack Swigert even had time to worry about the weekend's sporting results.
Who won the Masters, man? It was a tie.
One result they forgot to ask about was the weekend's FA Cup final between Chelsea and Leeds. If you're watching now, Jack, it was also a tie.
And there's David Webb, who won't have his hair cut until afterwards.
Jackie Charlton scored the first, the ball bouncing off his comb over.
It's a goal! I think it's Charlton.
Chelsea equalised thanks to some goalkeeping worthy of David Seaman. Leeds got their noses and mop-tops in front again thanks to Jones. But with 4 minutes remaining, Hutchinson headed an equaliser, making this the first tied cup final for 58 years. There were no penalty shootouts in those days. A 2-2 draw after extra time meant a replay. Who won the replay, trivia fans? Chelsea. Here's another one for you. Which programme began in 1970, has run for over 33 years and has had over 1,000 sporting guests? I'm going to have to hurry you.
There was a producer up in the northeast in Manchester called Nick Hunter who suddenly said, we've got miles and miles and hours of sporting archive material. We should be using this somehow. And he developed this idea of, why don't we have a quiz surrounding it?
Let's go straight away to our try your luck board, 1 to 12, pick the numbers off the board and see who you've got. Coop.
10, number 10.
10 for the skipper. Hello, hello.
Jimmy Hill.
Jimmy Hill, yes.
We got the best out of the people on the team. We made them laugh a bit, put a bit of fun back into sport. We were seeing the different sides of a lot of people who we'd only seen in maybe singlet and shorts, running like mad, or hitting a cricket bat, and we saw them as a person, and somebody was funny, and he was deadly serious, and she was gorgeous.
Helen Wilson.
Yes, Helen Wills Moody was one of the players. Yes. Ladies singles final, Wimbledon 1935.
The format has stayed. It's virtually the same today as it was back in 1970.
And in 1970, on Saturday nights, you could get caught up in the youthful high spirits of the young generation. You may have thought only Muppets performed Mana Mana, and you'd be right. This massive 30-piece dancing troupe included nasty Nigel Lithgow of Popstars fame, and also featured a pre-Blue Peter Leslie Judd. Meanwhile, back in the Blue Peter studios on Monday, things were a lot more sensible, kind of, and still in black and white.
You've got a lot of budgies lined up here. They're being fairly good at the moment, not chirping too much. What are they called?
Well, this is Fella.
Yes.
That's Cyril.
Very clever
That's
to remember
Morris.
them all.
Fred. Engelbert. Smile, you're on camera,
Does
boy.
Engelbert sing very well? I presume
Oh, he's got a
he
hit
does.
record coming out, yes.
Engelbert the Human had his own show on Sunday nights. Engelbert Humperdinck, of course, wasn't his real name, but I doubt that ITV would have commissioned the Arnold Dorsey show.
Tonight, a tribute to a glowing planet all on its own, Hollywood. From one of its most radiant stars, Miss Gina Lollobrigida.
The Hump got on the front page of the TV Times that week thanks to an appearance by Italian screen siren Gina Lollobrigida. A huge star on both sides of the Atlantic, Engelbert could attract big-name film stars onto his show, but nobody would be winning Oscars for this sketch.
Engel, why are you talking like that? You are not Italian.
Oh.
Pure class. Where ITV had all the showbiz glamour of the Humperdinck show, the BBC opted for the more simple appeal of Julie Felix. Just a hippie with a guitar.
We sat down, talked about what kind of show it was going to be. And basically, I talked about what I didn't want it to be. I didn't want it to be glitzy. I didn't want it to be phony. Part of my own self-being is playing my guitar.
That no one knows the names of.
We did have a vision of peace and harmony, because I feel I'm a musician, but I also feel I'm a kind of homespun philosopher. I like to think of music being part of a larger field of communication.
Were you really singing loud? You looked a bit bashful. Don't look at yourself, you get embarrassed. Look up here, here.
I ended that particular show with Guantanamera, which is it's a very nice Cuban song, and I knew that people probably would know that song.
If Julie's ditties didn't turn you on and sexual innuendo was your thing, then you could always fiddle with your knob and try something in the other channel, get it? And turn over to a carry-on special on BBC Two's Film Night, a rather sniffy highbrow look at some lowbrow comedy.
Carry On Up the Jungle is number 19 in the never-ending line of carry-on box office hits that have become a phenomenon in British filmmaking. Their pig's bladder philosophy has survived and even converted the critics. And year after year, the same faces churn out the same old gags, and the audiences love it.
Well, I played a hell of a lot of different roles, but they're all me, with different hats on.
The lovely thing with the carry-ons is, of course, it's like coming back to school after the holidays, because you know the people that you're working with.
There's no tension at all, no tension at all.
If you work quickly, you go bum, 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 and you do your scenes, you keep this air of spontaneity going, and I think this is what comes over in the carry-on films, this kind of spontaneous air.
Frankie Howard was the guest star of the Carry On team, but he had his own show on Monday night, otherwise known as Up Pompeii.
Ah, mistress.
Lurky, I was just wondering whether my body needed oiling.
Oh, well, I don't think so, mistress. It's hardly still long enough to get rusty.
All the same, do it for me, please.
Yes, mistress. Where?
On my back.
Oh, the back.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's nice. Oh, yes, Lurky, oh, lower.
Lower?
Lower. Oh, yes, Lurky, I have a problem.
Much more of this. I shall have one as well.
Women appeared to be more liberated in the Roman Empire than on the island of Sark in 1970. The Channel Islands' treatment of women, frankly, belonged to the Stone Age, as this report from Bob Langley of Nationwide showed.
You want to beat up your wife? Bring her here. It's perfectly legal in Sark, providing you don't draw blood. Feel like sending her out to work and then living off her earnings? Well, that's legal too. And there's not a thing she can do about it.
Why haven't you joined this protest with the other ladies?
Well, they haven't asked us, but even if they had, I'm afraid I wouldn't have joined,
because I'm very happy as the way we are now.
Meanwhile, back in the real world, Nationwide also offered a tantalising glimpse of women's fashions for spring 1970. Plenty of flowing lines, maxi skirts, and the first appearance of the platform sole since the 1930s. These fashions wouldn't be too out of place today, except perhaps for the two sets of eyebrows look.
When your daughter goes to work for the first time, the excitement she feels with her own money to spend, and crowds of new friends. Maybe she won't care what job she does before the gloss wears off.
Public information films like this urged young women to get vocational training rather than get a job straight after leaving school. In 1970, rocket imagery was everywhere, thanks to the successes of Apollo 11 and 12. On Tuesday, Apollo number 13 was about to live up to its unlucky number.
For a reason as yet unknown, some kind of explosion occurred in the spacecraft's main engine. The explosion affected the spacecraft's main power systems supplied by fuel cells. And that means that their oxygen supply is in jeopardy and their water supply is officially termed critical.
It was just before the astronauts were about to sign off for the night that James Lovell, the commander, uttered the immortal words that Houston never wanted to hear.
Houston, we've had a problem. Okay, stand by, 13. We're looking at it. And we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning there.
Despite the calmness of the astronauts, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that something had gone badly wrong. An explosion in the cryotanks had disabled the command module. The moon landing was immediately called off, and the mission now was to get them back to Earth as quickly as possible and before the oxygen ran out.
James Burke, assisted by Patrick Moore, did a fantastic job in keeping viewers aware of what was going on.
Jeffrey, you sit there. I'll start with the model, and I'll pass it to you for the theory. Pass me the model, mate.
The most important decision I made, I suppose, was to give them as much time as possible on air to reflect what was happening. All the regular programs, scheduled programs were thrown out, and we stuck with the space program.
And at the moment from Apollo 13, temporary silence as the crew get on with concentrating on some of their final preparations for the burn that will bring them back home to Earth.
They needed to fire their one remaining engine at the exact time and position in space to slingshot them round the moon and get them home.
That's the engine they have to use. This engine here is absolutely unusable.
They had to improvise and decide what to do. Go around the moon and come back that way. The only possible thing they could do. And they had to work all this out, hope that the rockets worked well, which they did. And, of course, it was said there was no margin of error at all.
There's no reason at all why this burn shouldn't work properly. I mean, we know it's going to be a very tricky manoeuvre indeed, but every indication is that it will, in fact, go all right. I think the main danger now is if something else goes wrong.
It was a tall order, particularly in an age when scientists had only just mastered the technological feat of pop-up toast. Popping up in ITV's Tuesday night schedule that week was a crisp new drama, A Family at War. The series cost £500,000, which in those days was quite a lot of money. Playing the young FREDA ASHTON was Barbara Flynn, also known as Fitz's wife in Cracker.
Hey, is it true Cephas is coming?
And who might that be, young woman?
Sorry, Dad, I didn't know you were there.
It was the time when you changed very fast. And young people of that age did grow up rather quickly because they had a boyfriend 1 minute and then maybe the boyfriend wasn't there.
Hey, she remembered it's your anniversary.
No, she has not. I'm very, very hurt, as a matter of fact.
Oh, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Sound just like our David. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheila. I didn't think.
I mean, it's a wonderful thing that human beings love to be reminded of times where they're bonded. Because, you know, we all flounder when we don't matter to each other. And, of course, wartime is the time that people really pull together because everyone needs everyone. And I think the series did that really well.
Dunn & Co. Ready-to-wear clothes.
An 8-guinea tweed jacket from Dunn & Co. would suffice for the ordinary chap in the street in 1970, but a real gent would make sure his clobber was hand-tailored. That week, the wacky adventure series The Avengers starred Diana Rigg as Emma Peel and Patrick Macnee as Steed, the epitome of British sang-froid and Savile Row tailoring.
It seems obvious to you. If you have a man doing an adventure show, why not have a woman doing it with him? But I can only tell you that that time, it was quite a way-out suggestion. And, of course, she came in, and she didn't come in and just say, oh, do you want a cup of tea, darling? It was none of that. It was a woman who was there. All right, now where do we go now? That sort of woman. And that was new. Thank God she wore no knickers. I would have preferred to play it with her naked. She had the most gorgeous body. She was absolutely delicious. She wore a catsuit, which, to all young men watching her walk away, was ooh, 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 their first orgasm. So that was Diana Rigg, sex and intellect. Now, of course, Dame Diana.
When Diana Rigg joined the Avengers team, she shocked Patrick with a frank admission.
She said, well, I'm a lesbian, you know. Well, of course, she wasn't. And I said, well, I'm a sadomasochist, you know, it's the only thing I like, and all that sort of... Oh, really? So we both looked at each other with a new sort of, hey, are they joking, or are they really like that? So we started playing with words, with ideas. As a result of that, we took that into the show. Everything about the Avengers is the opposite to what you would expect.
Well, I got the plans of the missile base. It was child's play. Yes, it was, wasn't it? Now pick up the map. All the little pieces.
You're not my nanny.
Oh, the disadvantages of the new Benson and Hedges 100s. They're a lot longer than king size, and that takes some getting used to. Benson and Hedges 100s are the new longer filter cigarettes. 3 puffs longer, 4 puffs longer, maybe 5 puffs longer than king size. Once you get the hang of them.
Remember, smoking can seriously damage other people's beards. These were the days before the government had stubbed out cigarette advertising, and ads like these were common. And there was a whole lot of smoking going on Tuesday's Joker's Wild, a panel game where comedians tried to out-gag each other. Keeping order was Barry Cryer.
Good evening and welcome to Joker's Wild, our joust of the jesters.
My memories of Joker's Wild, I used to define it as being paid for a day out, because it was me as the would-be chairman. Everybody's smoking, incidentally. Smoke is drifting across the screen. It's fascinating looking back.
The rules are very simple. Each one of our comedians will be asked to tell a joke from a subject on the card from this box here or that box there, and a member of the opposing team can, in fact, interrupt by pressing a buzzer.
I've never forgotten working with people like Arthur Askey and Ted Ray, because they were a complete massive symbol of the old musical and variety days, who'd adapted to television and was still going, so that was a joy.
Arthur Askey.
Oh, a woman said to the doctor, my little boy swallowed a 2-shilling piece. What shall I do? And the doctor said, well, keep him in bed until you see some change.
Ted Ray and Arthur Askey would return to do shows until, sadly, they left us, you know, but they were a sort of bedrock we built it on, a mixture of these two old heavyweights and the then younger comedians. I mean, Les was really finding his feet then.
Les Dawson.
I went to the doctor the day I watched this surgery. I said, can you help me out? He said, yes. Which way did you come in?
Grown men and women at dinners and when I do shows come up and say, I used to watch Joker's Wild when I came home from school, and it gives me a warm feeling.
Win my super stylophone mini organ with Cadbury's chocolate and toffee buttons. There's 50 to be won.
It's a little-known fact that David Bowie used the stylophone in Space Oddity. It's believed to be the one and only time that Bowie used Rolf Harris instruments. If you move at warp speed up the page, you'll see there were plenty more Space Oddities going on in Monday's edition of Star Trek.
Captain's log, stardate 1672.1. Specimen gathering mission on planet Alpha 177. Unknown to any of us during this time, a duplicate of me, some strange alter ego, had been created by the transporter malfunction.
The best way to describe Star Trek in those days was wagon train in space. Once we'd bought it and scheduled it early in the evening, where it belonged, it became a massive hit.
Captain, are you all right, sir?
This was a good Kirk, bad Kirk situation, and this Kirk was bad.
Captain?
At acting, mainly. In real space, by Thursday, the crew of Apollo 13 were wishing they could say, "Beam us down, Houston." They were suffering from lack of power, lack of heat, lack of sleep, and most worrying of all, lack of oxygen due to the buildup of carbon dioxide from their own breathing.
Everything went wrong. They had to improvise, the temperature, the air, everything had to be improvised. They hadn't got the material to do it. They had to make it up as they went. And at one stage, at the height of it, I was talking to NASA, not on the air, and I said, "Look, are you going to get them back?" And Bill said, "Well, if nothing else goes wrong, we'll get them back, but we have come to the end of our resources."
Using nothing more than materials available on board the spaceship, the boffins at NASA cobbled together a plan for a Blue Peter-style lithium hydroxide filter that would counteract CO2 buildup. All the astronauts had to do was assemble it themselves.
And now the next step, you get one of our old favourites, the plastic detergent bottles.
Back then, little did we know that John Noakes was training us for a career at NASA with his squeezy liquid bottles and sticky-back plastic constructions. But if you had to ask Mummy to use the scissors for you, then you should probably have been watching Watch with Mother. Since the early 50s, Watch with Mother was the umbrella title for a series of individual programmes for preschool children, or children who were at school but were pretending to be ill. Pogle's Wood, The Wooden Tops, Trumpton, and Mary, Mungo and Midge. A new animation in an urban setting by the creators of Captain Pugwash and narrated by newsreader Richard Baker.
Mary, Mungo and Midge live in the flat with the flowers growing in the window box. There's Mary.
Well, Mary was just everybody, all of us.
Or a child.
Yes.
A child.
There's Mungo.
Mungo was very solemn, wasn't he?
Yes, he was the wise old dog.
He was the wise old dog.
He always knew the answers.
And there's Midge.
And Midge was always fluttering about in the wrong place and turning up and being naughty, really.
He was the curiosity, the child's curiosity.
Yes. I had always greatly admired Walt Disney. I thought he was marvellous. And when I discovered that, it took something like 100 drawings a minute or whatever it was, I realized I simply couldn't do this at all. So then I started playing with bits of cardboard and levers and making people talk.
Oh, you're back. I suppose you're going to say that you took the letter to Mary's grandmother yourself.
Yes, me and several postmen.
How did you get there?
Oh, by van and train, you know. Oh, and then I went on a bicycle.
You raise the left arm up.
In this groove are two electric guitarists, a drummer, and someone playing finger cymbals very softly.
And in this advert, there's one smarmy git pretending to be a DJ. In the days before MP3s, mini-discs and CDs, you wanted a Grundig party boy to hear the best grooves of the day. Either that or you would have switched on to BBC One at 7:15 on Thursday for Top of the Pops.
Yes, it's number one. It's Top of the Pops.
In the charts that week, one-hit wonder Norman Greenbaum was singing Spirit in the Sky at number 5. At 4, Mary Hopkins sings Knock Knock, Who's There? It's Andy Williams at 3. It's Andy Williams at 3 Who? Stop it, Mary. Simon and Garfunkel were like Bridges Over Troubled Water at 2. And at number 1, mushy old Dana was singing All Kinds of Everything. Sickly. But there were plenty of other good tunes in the charts this week. Top of the Pops used to have a dance-off for the studio audience. The best dancers would get a couple of 45s. The losers would get nothing, other than abuse from their mates for dancing like a tool on national television. Who would you pick from this lot? Yep, the winners were these two, Fred and Daphne from Scooby-Doo. Another person not known for his dress sense was ITV's Catweasel, a ragged alchemist from the 11th century. When one of his magic spells went wrong, he was thrown 900 years into the future. Anchored in the 20th century, he would confuse modern technology for magic. To him, light bulbs and aeroplanes were all manner of trickery. Incidentally, Mary Whitehouse attacked the series for teaching paganism to children. The silly witch. Geoffrey Belden was Catweasel.
Change thou thy shape.
There was no magic on television. It was all just a bit grim. And this funny, imaginative, in the end lovable, warm thing happened.
What of thy magic?
How many times do I have to tell you, Catweasel? It's not magic, it's science.
Men fly through the air and 'tis not magic. Dost think me a fool?
Catweasel's after this magic, this magician, this boy, who knows about electrickery.
I want the electrickery.
Well, you can't have it.
I will blast thee.
Another time traveller roaming the airwaves was Doctor Who, played by John Pertwee. On BBC One on Saturday, he was battling the Ambassadors of Death, and rather appropriately bragging about his astronautical abilities.
I'll take the rocket up for you myself. Oh, thank you, Doctor, but I don't think you realise just what's necessary. My dear man, I've spent more time in space than any astronaut on your staff. Not, I'll admit, in the rather primitive contraptions that you use, but I'll manage.
As the damaged, rather primitive Apollo 13 contraption approached the Earth at 24,000 miles an hour, its future was in the balance. NASA's calculations had to be spot on. The angle of approach had to be exactly right. If it was too shallow, the ship would skim off the Earth's atmosphere like a stone. If it was too steep, the ship would burn up, and there was only a 1 degree margin of error.
We were living, quite frankly, on a knife edge. The thing could have gone horribly wrong. And what would we have been faced with? Seeing people dying on air would not have been really what we wanted.
Television history was in the making, but all thoughts were with the crew. NASA knew that as soon as the capsule hit the Earth's atmosphere, radio contact would be lost. All they and the rest of the world could do was wait, in agonized silence.
Everyone was united. Everyone was concerned about the astronauts. It wasn't English or Russian or Icelandic, but everybody. And that was a great thing. And the atmosphere was very, very tense. We had no idea what was going to happen.
By Friday the 17th of April, the Apollo mission had just about taken over the entire schedule and pushed aside all programs. The worldwide audience for the Apollo mission on Friday alone was over 1 billion. We may have failed to get to the moon, but that was the week we watched some hocus pocus from Catweasel, some penalty box wizardry from Jackie, some sword trickery from Steed, some comedy magic from Terry, and we watched John Noakes conjure something out of nothing. But the hardest trick of all was getting the crew of Apollo 13 home. After 5 long minutes, suddenly radio contact. At 7 minutes past 6 GMT, the capsule splashed down successfully in the North Pacific.
We expected silence, you always get that in, but when they finally splashed down, everyone had breathed a very, very long sigh of relief.
Cigars, handshakes and pats on the back all round for the chaps at NASA, after turning a potential disaster into success.
Everything's all right.
Sing the song, girl.
Everything's all right.
Sing the song, y'all. Everything's all right.
Apollo 13, in retrospect, was a landmark. It showed what can go wrong and what can happen. But above all, it brings out the resources of NASA and the courage of the astronauts.
What a story. Tension, drama, triumph over adversity, a happy ending. That'd make a great movie, don't you think? You what? Has it? Oh, bollocks.
Well, really, there's no need for that. 1982 tomorrow at 10:30 here on BBC Two.